Most people think adultery is about the other person, the affair partner, the temptation, the one who walked into the marriage from the outside. It was never about the other person. Adultery is about a gap inside the person who commits it, something unexamined, something unresolved, something that was always there, long before the affair, that the affair was simply the first thing large enough to fall into it. This is the story of Arthur, a man who had everything and destroyed it anyway, and what God does with a man who has to learn the hardest lesson of his life from the rubble of his own choices.
Welcome to Revelation Now, where faith meets real life, and every story reveals God's truth, hope, and purpose.
Arthur was a doctor, not just competent, genuinely gifted. The kind of doctor patients requested by name, whose opinion colleagues sought, who had built a private practice that ran well because he ran it with the same disciplined attention he brought to everything in his life. He had a wife named Claire. Claire was not a problem to be solved or a character in Arthur's story. She was a whole person, warm, intelligent, present, genuinely good in the ways that matter, who had built a real life alongside Arthur and believed entirely and without suspicion that he was building the same thing alongside her. They had a child. They had a home. They had a church they attended consistently enough that people knew their names. From the outside, from every angle that the outside could see, Arthur had what most people spend their lives working toward. And he sat in his home study some nights, long after Claire had gone to sleep, staring at the wall with a restlessness he could not name. Not dissatisfaction with Claire. That is important. He was not sitting there thinking about what was wrong with his marriage. He was sitting with something that had nothing to do with Claire at all, a question he had never learned how to answer. Who am I? When nobody is watching, not the doctor, not the husband, not the father, not the man in the good church seat. Who is the actual person underneath all of that performance? He had been too busy and too successful to sit with that question long enough to hear an answer. And that gap, unnamed, unexamined, quietly growing, was waiting. He met Diane at a hospital charity event. She was not predatory. She was not a villain. She was simply someone who looked at Arthur, the actual Arthur, not the role, and seemed interested in what she found. And that interest landed on the gap like a key fitting a lock. He told himself it was just conversation. He told himself it was harmless. He told himself, driving home that night, that he was in control of this. He was not in control of this. No one who tells themselves they are in control of something like this ever actually is. The texts started as professional. They became personal. And then, one afternoon in a hospital stairwell, his doctor's coat on, between patients, he looked at his phone and understood that he had already made a decision he had not consciously admitted to making, and he made it anyway. Here is what nobody talks about when they talk about affairs. The cost does not begin when it is discovered. The cost begins the moment it starts. Arthur started paying immediately, not in ways anyone could see. But he started watching himself from a distance. The doctor who sat across from patients and asked them about their lives while living a double version of his own. The husband who came home and kissed Claire and asked about her day while carrying something he could not put down. The father who sat at the dinner table, present in body, entirely absent everywhere else. He became very good at the performance of normalcy. He had always been good at performance. That was actually part of the problem. A man who has spent 38 years being what the room needs has a particular vulnerability. He has never learned to sit with himself long enough to know what he actually needs. And that unknown need becomes a gap, and gaps get filled one way or another. Claire found out on a Tuesday, not dramatically, not from a confrontation. She picked up his phone to check the time, and the time she saw was not what mattered. Arthur was in the kitchen when he heard her stop moving in the other room. That specific quality of stillness that happens when someone's world rearranges itself around new information. He walked to the hallway. She was standing at the far end of it with his phone in her hand, looking at him, and everything he had been telling himself for 4 months. That it could be managed, that it would not come to this, that he would end it before it reached here, collapsed in the space between them. She did not shout. She did not throw anything. She asked him one question. How long? And the answer he gave her, the honest one finally with no performance left, was the beginning of the worst night of his life. The Bible says something about adultery that the church tends to soften. Proverbs 6, verse 32. Whoever commits adultery destroys his own soul. Not, whoever commits adultery makes a mistake. Not, whoever commits adultery does something regrettable. Destroys his own soul, not just the marriage, not just the family, something in the person who commits it. And Arthur understood this verse in the weeks that followed in a way he never could have understood it before, because he felt it, not as a theological concept, as a physical reality, something in him that had been intact, something he had not known was there until it was gone, was simply not there anymore. He moved out. The practice continued. He showed up. He did his job. But he sat in a sparse apartment at night with his Bible open and the question he had never answered coming back. Who are you? When nobody is watching. Now, there was nobody watching. And what was? There was not what he had hoped. A man who had been so busy succeeding that he had never learned to be. Just be. Without the performance, without the achievement, without the role. Just Arthur. And Arthur, it turned out, did not know Arthur very well at all. He started seeing a counselor. Not to fix the marriage. Claire had made it clear that decision was hers to make in her own time, if at all. But because a pastor he trusted told him something that cut through everything else. He said, Arthur, the affair was a symptom. The question is what it was a symptom of. And until you answer that question honestly, you will carry the gap into whatever comes next. So Arthur sat in a counselor's office once a week and did something he had not done in 38 years. He stopped performing. He said things that were not polished or defensible or framed to make him look good. He said the true things, the ones about the restlessness, about the gap, about the identity built entirely on external achievement with nothing underneath, about a man who had been so busy saving other people's lives that he had never examined his own. He joined a men's group at his church, not as the doctor with the good marriage and the thriving practice, as the man who had made a catastrophic choice and was trying to understand why. It was the most uncomfortable thing he had ever done. More uncomfortable than medical school, more uncomfortable than his first surgery, more uncomfortable than anything his professional life had required of him, because those things required competence. This required honesty. And for a man who had spent his life being competent, honesty in a circle of other men felt like standing in the middle of a room with no walls. But he stayed. And slowly, something began to fill the gap that the affair had fallen into. Not the affair, not the approval, not the achievement. Something that was actually the right size and shape for what had always been missing. The presence of God in the places he had never invited God into. The examined life, the honest prayer, the brotherhood of men who knew the worst of him and did not leave. Claire did not take him back. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. That is not Arthur's story to write. That is hers. What Arthur could do, what he did, was show up for the child, consistently, reliably. Without the performance, just the presence, for the process, the counseling, the group, the daily prayer that was not dramatic, but was daily, for the work of becoming someone whose inside and outside matched, for the first time in his adult life. Psalm 51 is the psalm David wrote after his adultery with Bathsheba, after he had been confronted, after he could no longer perform his way around what he had done. He said, "Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a right spirit within me. Not restore my reputation, not give me back what I had. Create in me a clean heart." The prayer of a man who understands that what needs fixing is not the external circumstances. It is the interior, the gap, the unexamined place that the choice came from. David did not get everything back that his choice cost him, but God did not abandon him in the rubble either. He answered the prayer. He created something new in a man who had destroyed something old. Maybe you are Arthur, not the affair. Maybe you have never done what Arthur did. But the gap, the restlessness that has no name, the life that looks right from every angle and does not feel right from the inside, the performance of a person you are not sure you actually are. The question you have been too busy to answer, who are you, when nobody is watching? That question does not go away. And if you do not answer it honestly, in the safety of God's presence, in the honesty of real community, in the examined life that faith actually requires, it will find its own answer. And you may not like what it chooses. Or maybe you are Claire, sitting with something that was done to you that you did not cause and cannot fix. And the question of what comes next is yours to hold at your own pace. And God is not rushing you. And God sees you in this, every part of it. Proverbs says adultery destroys the soul. It does. But Psalm 51 says God creates clean hearts. He does that too, for the person who finally stops performing long enough to ask, "Create in me a clean heart, O God," and mean it.